Like I just said, we're going to increase the teams greatly. So you're going to see more teams on the streets you've never seen before. You're going to see more worksite enforcement than you've ever seen in the history of this nation. So we're going to flood the zone, and sanctuary cities will get exactly what they don't want. More agents in the neighborhoods, more worksite enforcement, because we want to get the bad guy. It's the safer for the officer, safer for the alien, the safer for the community. Okay, you're going to force him in the community to find him. If we can't find him in the community, we're going to find him at the worksite.
Imagine waking up one morning after years of working hard and building a life, only to find out the government has decided you no longer belong. Over 500,000 immigrants just got hit by this exact nightmare after a shocking Supreme Court decision. But how did we go from protection to potential mass deportation? And what does this mean for families, jobs, and entire communities? What exactly is the chaos this ruling is about to unleash? Stick around to see why even Supreme Court justices couldn't keep quiet about this. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. How does 500,000 people flip from living stable lives to fearing deportation overnight? For immigrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, the answer hit like a ton of bricks when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of scrapping protections they'd been relying on for decades.
We got sanctuary cities, or I said, we're going to flood the zone. If we can't arrest a bad guy in the jail, one agent arrests a bad guy in the jail, in the safety and security of the jail, if you want to make it difficult for us, we'll do it. It'll take more time, it's less efficient, but we're not going to stop until we find that guy.
Applying for asylum. Legal advocates have said that thousands have already started that process. But as we know, the cruelty of the Trump regime, the Supreme Court has effectively given the Trump administration the green light to create chaos.
The decision effectively pulled the rug out from under communities who were promised safety under a system known as Temporary Protected Status, or TPS. If the phrase temporary makes you think these were short-term arrangements, think again. For many, TPS has been their lifeline for years, even decades, as they built families, started businesses, and became integral parts of their communities. Now, all that stands to be wiped away. So, what actually happened? The Supreme Court sided with the Trump-era initiative to end TPS protections for these groups, overturning the rulings of lower courts that had previously blocked the effort. We're talking about protections that were granted to people escaping natural disasters, political crises, and violent conflicts in their home countries. These weren't just casual vacations gone long-term. These folks were fleeing situations where staying home wasn't an option. Yet, in a 5-4 decision, the court effectively declared, that's no longer our problem. And no surprises here. Justices Ketanji Brown Jackson and Sonia Sotomayor weren't having it. In their dissenting opinions, they warned that this ruling would create absolute chaos, with families torn apart and entire communities destabilized. It's one thing to debate policy, but it's another to actively ignore the human cost. To understand why this matters, let's break down what TPS actually did. Think of it like hitting the pause button on deportation for people coming from countries in crisis. It wasn't a golden ticket to citizenship or anything remotely permanent, but it let people live, work, and contribute without the fear of being thrown out of the country. For individuals, this often meant escaping the trauma of war zones or rebuilding after earthquakes and hurricanes. For communities, it meant more teachers, grocery store workers, and healthcare aides, people becoming the glue that holds neighborhoods together. Take Marisol, for example, a Nicaraguan immigrant living in Florida. She spent the last 15 years under this program, running a cleaning business and employing 10 people in her neighborhood. Now, not only is she at risk for deportation, but so are her employees who rely on her for work. Multiply that story by the thousands, and you start to see how disruptive this decision could be. Here's where it gets even more complicated. The fight over TPS protections didn't just pop up overnight. Trump's administration tried to terminate these protections years ago, arguing that conditions in these countries had improved. Spoiler alert, they haven't. Courts back then blocked those efforts, citing everything from shoddy reasoning to outright violation of administrative law. But this Supreme Court ruling flips the script. Now, instead of needing to justify why protections should end, the burden shifts onto those trying to keep them in place. Basically, it's like moving the goalposts after the game's already started. For legal scholars, this isn't just a technical issue, it's a seismic shift in how immigration law is interpreted. Let's be real. This ruling isn't just a story about legal paperwork, it's about people. A Haitian father who works 2 jobs to send his kids to college can now wake up any day to a deportation notice. A Venezuelan nurse who spent the pandemic taking care of COVID patients may suddenly be seen as expendable. And let's not forget the ripple effects on the communities left behind. Local hospitals, construction sites, and restaurants across the country lean on workers with TPS. Lose them, and it's like yanking a critical piece out of the puzzle. Economists are already warning about potential labor shortages and disruptions in industries where these immigrants make up substantial parts of the workforce. Here's where the bigger picture starts to come into focus. This isn't just about these 500,000 people. It's part of a calculated strategy to shift the country's entire approach to immigration. Trump's agenda was never just about building a wall or stopping migration at the border. This ruling ties into his playbook of narrowing legal pathways for immigrants while expanding tools for deportation. The message is clear. We don't want you here, period. And let's be honest, this wasn't a sideline issue during his presidency. It's at the heart of how he reshaped the national conversation about who gets to call America home. What's coming next? Well, this decision isn't happening in a vacuum. It's setting the stage for a cascade of challenges for families, employers, and entire communities. The chaos Justices Jackson and Sotomayor warned about isn't a distant threat. It's already knocking on the door. So what happens when protections get stripped and nothing's left to fall back on? That's where the real conversation begins. What happens when you rip away protections like TPS from over 500,000 people and leave them in immigration limbo? Spoiler, it's not great. For immigrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, this Supreme Court ruling has turned stability into uncertainty overnight. Remember, these weren't just people looking for a change in scenery. They came here because the alternative was living in countries riddled with political corruption, natural disasters, or outright violence. TPS wasn't some handout. It was survival. And now, the clock's ticking on everything they've built here. Let's talk about the actual fallout. Losing TPS doesn't just mean maybe having to pack up and leave. It's not like these people have another home ready and waiting. It means losing jobs, homes, entire lives. For instance, many TPS holders are deeply woven into industries like construction, caregiving, and food services. So, when that status disappears, it's not just the immigrants who lose, it's their employers, their co-workers, and the local economy. Imagine a small-town restaurant that suddenly loses half its kitchen staff because their TPS expired. That's not just a staffing issue. That's lost business, empty seats, and customers slowly drifting away. And trust me, the mess doesn't stop at the workplace. The community impact runs deeper than that. Picture a neighborhood that relies on a Haitian daycare owner. She's been caring for kids since diapers, watching them grow up, and giving parents the flexibility to work. Deport her and sure, she packs her bags, but so does the trust and stability she brought to those families. Multiply that across hundreds of thousands of individuals, and you're not just losing employees or community leaders, you're losing the heartbeat of entire communities. Economically, cutting off TPS holders is like shooting yourself in the foot and wondering why you're bleeding. Experts have already flagged this as a looming issue. These individuals contribute through taxes, purchasing power, and the labor force. Take them away, and it's not hard to see cracks forming in industries like healthcare or agriculture, industries that already have labor shortages. And before anyone tries to say, well, other people will take those jobs, let's be honest, that's not how it works. No one is lining up to fill roles in some of the toughest, most physically demanding jobs. But maybe you're thinking, can't these people just, apply for something else? Get asylum? In theory, sure. In reality, good luck. The asylum process is more clogged than your Wi-Fi during peak Netflix hours, thanks to policies set in motion by, you guessed it, the Trump administration. Legal pathways have tightened, protections have been narrowed, and now even people with legitimate fears of persecution are facing a harder road. And let's remember, some of these individuals have already been here for 10, 15, even 20 years. Starting from scratch in a legal system that feels designed to trip you up, that's more than just daunting. It's borderline impossible. The human toll here is impossible to ignore. Think about Maria and Luis, a couple from Nicaragua who've called the US home for 18 years. They run a cleaning business, employ a handful of locals, and are raising 2 teenagers who know more about TikTok trends than Spanish grammar. But their TPS is gone now. Deportation means tearing their family apart, either separating the parents from their US-born kids or forcing the entire family to move to a country the kids have never even visited. And for what? To send some kind of political message? Congratulations. Message received. Unfortunately, it's the wrong people paying the price. And honestly, here's where it feels less like an accident and more like part of the plan. Call me cynical, but this chaos doesn't feel like a whoops moment. The Trump administration wasn't shy about its goals. Policies like these didn't just appear out of nowhere. They fit into a broader strategy to reshape how immigration works in this country. And not in a good way. This is about limiting pathways for legal migration, tightening asylum rules, and expanding deportation tools. There's even talk of a remigration office, which sounds like it came straight out of a dystopian novel. It's an office specifically designed to organize pushing people out. How's that for hospitality? This ruling doesn't just nudge us closer to that vision. It dives in head first. The question now isn't just how much damage will be done to these individuals, their families, and their communities. It's also about whether this policy serves a broader, harsher agenda. Because it's not just the immigrants who lose when protections like TPS are stripped away. It's the people who relied on them, benefited from them, and counted them as neighbors and friends. And honestly, everyone deserves to sit with that reality for a moment. This Supreme Court decision isn't just about ending TPS. It's a glimpse into an immigration system being rewritten to be far harsher. By siding with Trump's agenda, the court has signaled a shift toward expanding executive power while ignoring the devastating consequences. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson put it clearly, this ruling will create devastating consequences on hundreds of thousands of lives. The question now is, what kind of nation do we want to be? Communities have the power to push back through advocacy, legal challenges, and showing solidarity. The fight isn't over. If anything, it's just getting started. Stay tuned.